Good afternoon. My name is Ed Schlesinger, and I'm the Benjamin T. Rome Dean of the Whiting School of Engineering, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the 2021 Ilene Busch-Vishniac Lecture. I'm excited to see so many participants with us here virtually, and I'm glad that we're able to continue this tradition even in this virtual format. This lecture was established by a group of alumni and faculty who wanted to recognize Ilene Busch-Vishniac for her contributions to the Whiting School during her tenure as dean. The lecture provides the opportunity for an accomplished woman to speak to the Johns Hopkins community. Ilene Busch-Vishniac served as a faculty member at various institutions before coming to Johns Hopkins in 1998 to serve as dean of the Whiting School of Engineering, becoming the school's first and only female dean. She remained at Johns Hopkins until joining McMaster University as provost in 2007. During her tenure as dean, Dr. Busch-Vishniac helped attract more research funding and emphasized aggressive recruitment of students and faculty. Undergraduate engineering enrollment rose more than 20%, and the school almost doubled its number of research centers. She has served as the lead supervisor for 18 PhD students, 34 master's students, and a host of undergraduate students engaged in research projects, and has received several teaching and research awards. And I am truly honored that Dr. Busch-Vishniac is here with us virtually in today's audience. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our Spring 2021 Ilene Busch-Vishniac Lecturer, Marcia Howes. Marcia earned a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Johns Hopkins University, a master's degree in public health from the Bloomberg School of Public Health, and an MBA from the University of Maryland. She is a certified supply chain professional through APICS, a Gallup certified StrengthsFinder coach, and a Lean Six Sigma practitioner. She is the first vice president of global procurement for DaVita, a kidney-focused global healthcare provider headquartered in Denver, Colorado. She is responsible for establishing and growing an enterprise-level procurement organization that leads all sourcing and supply management activities for the company. Marcia's community involvement includes serving on the governing board of Surge for Water, Clean Water Sanitation and Hygiene nonprofit, and she is active in local charities that support public health initiatives. Later this spring, she will begin serving on the Department of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering's advisory board here at Johns Hopkins. We are fortunate to have Marcia with us today to share her story. And with that, I'll hand over the floor to Marcia.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you for that great intro. I'm going to share just a couple slides, so let me open them up and we'll get going. Well, first of all, good afternoon to all my fellow Blue Jays. I wish so much that I were there in Baltimore with you, because as a family, we always regularly ship steamed crabs and crab cakes for holiday celebrations. As you may have heard, there's lots of snow in Colorado right now where I normally am, but fortunately I'm in Florida today, so you'll only see sunshine in my background and hopefully won't hear too many noises from birds or other critters that are outside. To start, I would like to also share my great appreciation for the opportunity to speak with you today and to thank Ilene for inspiring this lecture series. So thank you very much. A month or so ago, when I was asked to speak with you, I had kind of assumed this was a frequent series, and because I'd recently volunteered for some campus activities, my name just popped up. Well, this weekend, I was doing a bit more research and to prep for today, and discovered that according to the website, the goal of this lecture is to feature outstanding women in engineering sciences and highlight the intellectual contributions of the lectures while inspiring young women to pursue degrees and careers in engineering. Well, after getting through the shock of that, I thought, oops, I hope they don't regret asking me. I'm not sure how many intellectual contributions I'll be highlighting today, but that was just 2 days ago. I discovered that was my task, so I didn't have any time to wiggle out of the commitment. but I'll let you know I wouldn't have. My responsibility strength is just a little bit too high there, but we'll talk about that a little later. Today's discussion may be light on these intellectual contributions, but it will be filled with many examples of why an engineering degree is a perfect foundation for a successful career. I'm already confident that each of you is well prepared to succeed based on your individual strengths, your life experiences, and the specific skills that you have gained at Hopkins with this engineering degree. Today, I'll share highlights of my leadership journey and some of the lessons I learned along the way. In particular, I'll focus on how valuable it has become for me to work with my strengths, to recognize the strengths of others, and to build my teams in ways that maximize our ability to achieve both individual, team, and enterprise goals. My hope is that you will hear one or two things that ring true to you, and this will inspire your decisions in the future as you map out a career journey. You've already found successful ways to use your natural strengths and to deliver the results needed to begin this journey. The fact that you're here listening to this lecture shows you have a natural desire to learn more. As budding engineers, you probably all share some similar strengths in analytics, in problem solving, but studies have clearly shown that as humans, we are extremely unique. In fact, your combined strengths are nearly as unique as your fingerprint. That's why you have to be in charge of your journey and the career path that you choose. So 35 years ago, yes, that's how long since I graduated, I sat in your seat. Not literally, of course. Zoom wasn't even a dream at that point. In preparation for this presentation, I spent some time reflecting on my life on campus. Johns Hopkins was the one and only school I applied to. I had spent my early childhood running around the campus lawns and making snow angels in the quad while my father was a graduate student at Hopkins. He was a chemist, and I greatly admired him. I have never once regretted my decision to become a Blue Jay. I chose chemical engineering because I loved math and chemistry, and quite bluntly, because the starting salary of an engineer was significantly higher than that of a mathematician or a chemist alone. My time at Hopkins was a time of growing up and figuring out how I wanted to start my adult life. It was a great mix of academics, community, sports, and leadership. I led the Chemical Engineering Institute's student chapter. I did work-study research jobs on campus. I participated in the Freshman One Acts. I tutored fellow students. I ran, or I would probably call it jogged, with the women's track club. And of course, I watched lots of soccer and lacrosse. My senior year, I used the career office to land a job as an engineer in research at W.R. Grace in nearby Columbia, Maryland. There, I was able to study novel catalysts for their ability to enhance octane in gasoline. I was on my way, or so I thought. As I flash forward 35 years, I am now that vice president of procurement at DaVita, who's a healthcare provider focused on transforming kidney care delivery to improve the quality of life for patients globally. This role, like those that came before it, capitalizes heavily on my engineering background. As an engineer, I can easily analyze data, solve problems, understand product specifications, and develop key performance indicators. When I left Hopkins, did I have any idea that I would work in multiple industries across different functional areas and lead global teams through supply chain transformation? Certainly not. But am I, or those that know me best, surprised? No, we aren't. I've always been interested in improving processes and using my problem solving, executing, and influencing skills to make things work better. I'm basically drawn to chaos and the opportunity to bring order. I like being able to simplify complex, non-efficient processes and business structures. I like cleaning up messes, I guess. And let me assure you, there are still lots of messes to clean up in corporate America. Admittedly, I also get bored easily. It is this trait that led me to the many different opportunities I've had over the last 35 years. It also led me to discover the concept of strengths leadership. For the past 15 years, I've been using principles established by Gallup's Clifton Strengths, or previously known as Strengths Finders, assessment and coaching programs. But there are many similar approaches you may find useful. As an engineer, I happen to like the structure and science behind the Gallup approach, and I'll share a few highlights from their work in the stories I tell today. So I shared a job title, but who am I? Yes, I'm an executive leader in healthcare, but I am not going to repeat the outstanding presentation on the challenges of transforming the US healthcare industry that was done by the last lecturer in this series, although I do highly recommend you take a look at it. I am a supply chain professional, but I'm not going to teach you Supply Chain 101 in this session either. This is probably where I'm supposed to share all the intellectual contributions I have made as a Hopkins engineer. Yes, I have applied my learnings to save corporations money, to improve customer service, to enhance product quality, and most importantly, to keep my employees safe. But this was my job and my responsibility as a human being. It wasn't something that I alone achieved. It was the result of hard work and teamwork. I am most importantly a daughter, a sister, a wife, a mother, and now a grandmother. I have been both inspired by and given inspiration to the dozens of brilliant women and men whom I have had the honor of calling family, friends, and colleagues. So who am I? A little bit about me. I'm sharing this collage. These pictures also show my immediate family and some of the quirkier parts of my personality, that I love Key West and jet skiing, that I have seen the musical Wicked 14 times in 11 different states and 3 different countries. I will actually admit I'm a little tired of it now. But I also enjoy camping in our Airstream and cheering for my favorite Baltimore sports teams, go Ravens. It also tells stories of my childhood, that I raised rabbits. I even went to 4-H nationals. How many of you even know what 4-H is? I won't get into that, but so I somehow turned that into collecting rabbit-based china called bunnykins. That's what that picture of my china closet is. And also that I still love the Bloom County comic characters that I read throughout my teen years in the 1980s. That's Opus the Penguin saying, "Life is briefish, love now." While that picture was drawn about 5 years ago, it seems even more important in this moment. You also see the Hopkins seal. I already mentioned that my father did his graduate work at Hopkins, but I hadn't yet revealed that I met my husband while watching soccer at Homewood. And my oldest daughter followed the family tradition and graduated in 2011. She didn't follow my engineering path, but she is also a healthcare leader, so I can't complain. 3 generations of Blue Jays and hoping for a 4th someday. My granddaughter is already well supplied with Hopkins and Ravens gear, and in the picture, she's got her Ravens jersey on. The slide also tells you that I am that certified Gallup's coach. I added this to my resume 5 years ago after having used the Gallup program for over 10 years. I had such good results, I wanted to be even better at maximizing impact individual strengths could have on overall team performance. And lastly, the word PRISM is on this slide. It is the name of my current growing procurement organization. DaVita has a very unique culture where the company is the village, the employees are teammates, the CEO is the mayor, and every department has a name other than the generic one you would expect. As an engineer, you would be correct in guessing that it took me a while to get used to this new dynamic, but I have grown to greatly appreciate it. It is part of a genuine culture of caring for our patients, our teammates, our communities, and our world overall. PRISM was the name my team selected, and it is an acronym for our core responsibilities: procurement, risk reduction, innovation, and supply management. Plus, the text is in purple, which is my favorite color. So it all worked out. So a little bit about what do I really do? What is it that makes me unique? I lead breakthrough transformation. This started very early in my life when I reorganized my mother's kitchen cabinets. She wasn't quite so happy. And I figured out the fastest way to feed and water all the animals on our farm. Later in the working world, I volunteered for improvement projects and naturally gravitated toward the concept of supply chain optimization and process improvement. I made many career decisions along the way, some big, some small, and that's what led me to my current position. I also don't limit my transformations to work-life challenges. To work-life challenges. I look for opportunities in my own family and community to make things better. To be honest, this always doesn't always sit well with my family, so I have had to learn when to turn myself off. Overall, it's a perfect role for me. It uses my core strengths, and they're there on that slide: achiever, strategic, learner, competition, and maximizer. Responsibility actually used to be in the top 5. It's now number 6 or 7. Had to push it down a little. I was saying yes to, to too many things. But as you can see, these are what make me who I am. To some, my life has been full of extremes, not just for me, but for my family. Long hours, extensive travel, multiple moves, including an expat assignment, and living in a multi-generational household. And that was 4 generations, I might add. It required continuous juggling, family negotiations, and rapid change management. What I'd like to share with you today are the 4 keys to my success that I think might be helpful to each of you, regardless of the path you choose. Number 1, start by looking for ways to add value quickly by eliminating waste and capitalizing on your natural strengths. Number 2, always be open to new ideas and different ways to solve problems. Number 3, always demonstrate high professional integrity and courage. And number 4, and to me most importantly, be true to yourself and your definition of success. Manage your career in line with that definition. Don't feel constrained by anyone else's. So let's look at how this worked for me and how it may work for you. I'm going to cover the 4 points in reverse order, and with each, I'll share some examples of what this looked like in my career journey. So what about your career? You've most likely seen ladders and mountain images or some other version of linear and stepwise paths to the top. That's what you see on the left. I'd like to challenge that image and tell you that it isn't your only path to success or happiness. Just like your natural strengths profile, your career path is unique. It is a multidimensional journey that needs to balance time, performance, happiness, and the best use of your talents. It needs to take into account what is most important to you, whether that be industry, role, geography, culture, financial security, or any other component. My career was definitely a winding journey. I went straight into the chemical industry right after my undergraduate chemie degree. I thought to myself, isn't that the whole point of my degree? But I quickly discovered I was drawn to solving business problems and meeting customers' needs. I wasn't as satisfied by the academic side of research. That led me to an MBA program. It was also the time I started having children and a more flexible job opportunity came up, managing the small chemical manufacturing company I had worked at as a student every summer break. There I got to become the jack of all trades, and without even realizing it, I started my journey as a supply chain leader. It was these broad entrepreneurial experiences that were most valuable when I returned to larger corporate jobs. I later found the small business limited my opportunities to grow and innovate. I then found an opportunity to specialize in planning and supply chain optimization for a large global sulfuric acid manufacturing company. When I felt I had done everything I needed to for the US side of that business, I volunteered to go to France and repeat the process there. It was a lateral move, but it gave me experience that would be invaluable in how to dive headfirst into a new culture and deliver value even when the organizational resistance was high. This was all in the chemical industry. Remember I said I get bored easily? Well, fortunately, in the early 2000s, the healthcare industry was waking up and recognizing the need for better supply chain performance. This was the challenge I was looking for, and I quickly fell in love with the opportunity to improve the quality of human life. After a few years, while I was researching infection prevention and control, I realized a master's in public health would be a great complement to my existing experience in education. So I, of course, turned again to Johns Hopkins. This resulted in an even stronger commitment to making healthcare supply chains more effective and efficient. But my journey hasn't only been about professional success. I've made choices focused less on my career and more on personal happiness. After having left Colorado in 2009 for a great opportunity, I realized I really missed the mountains and sunshine of the Rocky Mountain State. So in 2017, I accepted a less than perfect job to get back to the place I knew was the right home for me. I've never regretted this choice for family and joy, and it has all worked out. In the beginning, I had the opportunity to work for a great Berkshire Hathaway company, and then later I transitioned to DeVita, where I'm back transforming a supply chain and serving patients. Next, I talked about and recommended demonstrating personal integrity and courage. This has been a non-negotiable for me my entire life, and my resolve has certainly been tested. At one point in my career, I was offered the opportunity to take my first vice president level position. It was focused on integrating a newly acquired medical device company into a much larger business that itself had been recognized as one of the most ethical companies to work for many years. I was honored to get the opportunity, but I quickly discovered something wasn't right. The legacy leadership of the acquired company was vague and evasive about certain key information regarding inventory values, product quality standards, and many other things. My largest manufacturing plant was in the Dominican Republic, and once the local leaders there met me, they shared their concerns regarding conflicts of interest, theft, employee safety, and regulatory compliance. My soon-to-retire predecessor was still with the company, and I was inheriting his so-called indispensable team. I had two choices: wait and see, or take immediate action. I decided to take immediate action. This was hard as a brand new employee, but I had responsibility for over 2,000 employees. If I didn't take action to eliminate the bad behaviors and get the supply chain back on track, I put my team's safety at risk and would have betrayed the trust they had put in me. This ultimately meant secretly flying to the DR with lawyers and security guards to terminate employees, including the plant leader, who we later discovered had guns, drugs, and cash in their offices. For a brief moment in time, I feared for my own safety. It also meant writing off millions of dollars of out-of-spec inventory that had been counted in the acquisition valuation. This wasn't easy to swallow for leaders of the acquiring company who had missed these issues during the due diligence process. But I, and so did the main company's leadership, knew it was the right and only thing I could do. In the end, our productivity went up, our quality and compliance was protected, our safety record improved over tenfold, and I made some of the best friends of my professional career. Next on my list was being open to new ideas and new ways to solve problems. Let's face it, you are all pretty darn intelligent individuals. You had to be to get accepted to this great institution and to choose a degree in engineering. I'd like to remind you that intelligence doesn't always equal smart or even right. I made that mistake, and I am willing to admit it. When I went back to that small business I had worked at Summers for many years, I thought I now had the answers to all their problems. I was in my early 20s. I knew how to overhaul the computer systems, how to design the products, how to manage the supply chain activities, but I did not really know anything at all about leading people. Even worse, I thought everyone should work and solve problems the same way I did. After a few months of unknowingly annoying many of my direct reports, and while once again micromanaging an experienced coworker, That 40-something-year-old woman, office manager, suddenly said to me, and I think this is pretty close to a direct quote, "Just because you worked here before and went to Johns Hopkins doesn't mean you know everything." I will give her credit. She knew Johns had an S on it. She was really a great lady. That felt like a slap across the face. And I'll admit my first impulse was to start defending my position. But thankfully, I didn't. And instead, I asked her to show me how she did the work. Guess what? She got the same good results. Her strengths were different than mine, but they were in no way less than mine. I am so grateful to have learned this lesson early in my career, and I am sure it is one of the many reasons why I have embraced the strength-based leadership style throughout. And finally, my transformation approach has always included eliminating waste and maximizing the available strengths of the situation, whether they be the people, the processes, the capital assets, or a combination of all. It was only later in my career that I realized that these were the principles of lean and strength-based leadership. So I couldn't help myself but give you a quick look at the 8 types of waste defined by lean principles. I'm not going to begin to give you a speed lesson in lean, but I did want to point out how many types of waste exist right under our noses. We often don't realize how damaging this waste can be to overall business success and individual morale. While lean principles originated in the manufacturing environment, they are equally important across almost every type of activity you may be involved with. Every time you wait in line, buy more than you need, spend time redoing a job, or waste the talents of your team. Keep this in mind when you ask yourself, how can I make this situation better? In fact, as I write these notes, I realize this waste reduction obsession of mine is what causes me to transform leftovers into creative meals whenever possible, eliminating waste and transforming something at the same time. This is also what attracted me to healthcare. I have led supply chain transformation in both healthcare manufacturing and the provider side of the industry. My teams have reduced transport through local sourcing initiatives and reduced inventory to free up cash for innovation and people development. We have reduced motion and wait times on manufacturing floors by redesigning workstations and providing improved operating procedures. We've reduced overproduction and defects by improving quality standards with our suppliers and advancing demand planning practices with our sales team. And we eliminated overprocessing by listening to our customers' true requirements, and most importantly, by listening to our team, the very people who made the products every day. The original list of wastes only had 7 forms. Adding unused talents happened a bit later. To me, the wasting of human potential is actually the most harmful to an organization. You have or will earn an engineering degree, so I'm sure you can imagine how frustrating it would be if your voice were not heard or your talents not leveraged on the job. This actually happens in healthcare more than you would think. Patient care technicians who feel they are ignored by nurses, nurses who feel ignored by doctors, and even doctors who feel hospital administrators don't listen to their ideas. Fortunately, the industry is working to correct these legacy issues. We are closing the divide between management and the front line. We're open to and acting on feedback from all of our teammates, and most importantly, we ask for input and ideas constantly. And finally, what about that strength-based approach I keep mentioning? Well, here are a few pieces of research from Gallup. People who focus on their strengths are 3 times as likely to report having an excellent quality of life. I think pretty much everyone would like an excellent quality of life. Those same people are 6 times as likely to be engaged in their jobs. And for employers, engaged employees are much more easily retained. In addition, organizations who focus on their employees' strengths maximize their potential. Employees who learn to use their strengths every day have nearly 8% greater productivity And when you add in leadership strengths feedback, teams also have almost 9% greater profitability. I'm not just quoting Gallup statistics, I have lived these results. The manufacturing team in the Dominican Republic blossomed when they were given the freedom to solve problems and implement change based on what they knew were the strengths of their workforce. The patient care technicians in hospitals stay longer when their strengths are recognized and they are given the opportunity to help redesign standard work practices and eliminate supply waste. These concepts are critical in the transformation of our US healthcare system, and that is exactly why I'm here. Working to make sure healthcare is both affordable and delivering the best care possible to my children, my grandchildren, and the entire human race. So my engineering degree truly was and is the foundation of my adult life. It gave me the skills I needed to solve problems and explore new ideas, to reduce costs, improve service, and ensure the quality of products and services I work to deliver. I am indeed more satisfied and productive when I get to use the strengths I have developed as a part of this amazing career journey. This was a brief story of my journey from engineer to healthcare supply chain professional. Each of you will have your own unique journey to navigate. My parting advice is to always listen to the voice inside yourself. Sometimes it comes from your heart, and sometimes it comes from your head, but either way, it will guide you. Look for and stay with experiences you can be passionate and excited about. Maintain your focus on continuous learning for both yourselves and for those around you. And don't ever stop looking for ways to add value in both your personal and professional life. You have the strengths needed to guide you. As an engineer, you know how to take on difficult challenges and to make things better. Use that gift to make this amazing world a little bit better every day. Our future is soon in your hands, and I have confidence that it will continue to get brighter as a result. You each have so very much to offer. The world needs you, and the world can't wait to see what you can do. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's so great to hopefully meet a bunch of you in the Q&A, and I will hand it back over to whoever's moderating questions.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you very, very much for truly a wonderful presentation. Your story, your professional journey is absolutely inspirational. So really appreciate your sharing that with us. Now we do have time for questions and answers, and I would invite the folks in the audience to submit questions, and I would ask you in the audience to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. For those of you used to chat, you may notice that there's actually a Q&A button as well, and if you use that, I'll monitor the questions, and I'll convey them to our speaker. Marcia, as people are gathering their thoughts, I did have one question. Your story of your experiences with the Dominican Republic facility and what you discovered there and so forth. I mean, it's one thing to talk about the need for courage to take action in work, but this is an example of something where truly this was a courageous thing to do on multiple levels, and including even the potential of your physical safety in terms of what you discovered there. You couldn't have known what the reaction of the acquiring company and its leadership would be when you brought what was obviously bad news to them. You must have then gotten yourself into a mind frame of something along the lines of, okay, if I get fired for this, I'm good with that and I'll move on to the next thing, or someplace internally where you were willing to take risk here, right? And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit about how you kind of knotted up your courage and went forward with that.
I did it for the people in the Dominican Republic. The offending person was not a native Dominican, and his behavior was what we needed to investigate. And when his team, his direct reports, came to me and told me about the atrocious things they believed were going on, I just felt there was no other choice but to do that for them. I was taking phone calls throughout a number of weeks at once they had met me and felt they could trust me. And it was my duty to look out for them and to stop the offenses. So of course, when we flew there, and I did get to fly with my HR peer, and my senior leader came along, she took care of one termination and I took care of the other two. It was one of the two that I took care of that had all of the offensive items in the office, that there were actually a few more that I wouldn't even say out loud. But we were very well coached, and I had been coached while this person took the position that they couldn't communicate with me. They kept asking to go back to their office, and I was very well prepared to say, no, you will not go back to your office. And thankfully I didn't, because that's where there were weapons. But we knew we did the right thing, and we did the only thing we could. And that's what was beautiful about the acquiring company. They had always been a very, very ethical and stand-up company. They always and still are. So they knew they just had to do it. And it all worked out, because when you do the right thing, then things get fixed.
Yeah. It really speaks to the need when you start to work at a company to really do a little bit of investigation yourself as to who am I going to work for? Who are the people I'm going to associate with? Really quite a cautionary tale, because if the acquiring company for whom you worked didn't have ethical leadership, this could have been a very different story. So very, very interesting. So we do have some questions in the Q&A. So question number one is, what do you see as the biggest potential workplace transformation as we all return to normalcy post-COVID? And what will change for good in your estimation?
Well, it's clear that we've all been successfully, those of us that physically can be successfully working from home or remote locations, we've changed many, many executive leaders' perspective on whether this is feasible, whether you still maintain productivity. We've actually proven in many cases productivity increases. So I think there will be a permanent change in our willingness and the relaxation of the virtual workplace. I'm no prophet on that, because that's already come out with many big companies saying they're going to do it. I think the other things that we will have to work through are how to rebuild teams, how to influence each other, how to work collaboratively. That's still difficult. In my own case, we're trying to rotate some days in the office, and we realize that if you don't have everyone in the office on the same days, you don't have the collaboration opportunity. But if you do have everyone in the office on the same days, you're increasing your continued public health issues. So there's still lots of things to work out. I think there's going to be a big shift in the corporate real estate market. Of course, we've already seen signs of that. I think there's a big shift in the mindset of the workers themselves. Myself, I can jump up and do a load of laundry while I'm on a conference call. I've grown to find that quite useful, because I don't have as many chores to do at the end of the workday. I can let my dogs out the back and not have to pay for a dog walker. So there are a number of industries that so sadly have been negatively impacted by this, and then there are others that have been so positively. So things will have to rebalance in career development, workforce retention. I don't have all the answers, but thank you for the question. There's still much to be figured out.
Thank you. We have a question that's very much in your industry perspective, which is one of our audience members is asking, is there an opportunity for a standalone pharmacy benefits manager? Given that Aetna acquired Express Scripts and Walgreens acquired Cigna, what's the workaround for companies like Amazon?
Not exactly my area of expertise yet, so I don't have a terribly informed opinion on that. I will have to pass and say that I'm only beginning to build a pharmacy strategy for my current employer, and we buy such a limited realm of drugs that I haven't gone to that bigger question. As you might know, while I was not know that while I was at the Berkshire Hathaway company, you might know that Berkshire tried to stand up a group called Haven that was really going to look into all things healthcare costs, pharmaceutical management. That venture failed. So there's still a lot to be figured out. And with these acquisitions, as the asker mentioned, a lot more to determine and figure out. My personal opinion is that we shouldn't even have to negotiate pharmaceutical costs, but then I get into some political views that I don't fully have. I just really don't think that there should be thousands of people trying to negotiate for the same critical pharmaceuticals for their employees. So I think there's lots of room for improvement, but I don't have an informed answer on that question. I'm sorry.
I can. It's an interesting question. I think that I'm certainly not an expert in this field, but what I understand from the questioner is that there's significant consolidation taking place, and we've seen that in other industries where you sort of end up with a canonical big three that take over an industry. But then, of course, some innovator comes along, like Tesla, and disrupts the what seemed to be a very stable situation for auto production, and so who knows? It's an interesting question.
You gave it a better answer than I did. Thank you.
Another question here on a different subject is, what was your first experience with strength finders?
It was actually when I was with Amgen, the biotech pharma company, and it was introduced by a really great HR director. And we first just took the assessment and learned what our strengths were. And it was like bells and whistles and lights all went off at the same time. And I said, that's what I've been so hungry for. So it was so insightful for me personally to learn that's why I feel that way or behave that way. My maximizer that sometimes makes me an obnoxious perfectionist, my competitor that has made me banned from Pictionary games with my family for years because I get too competitive. But it also gave me insight to how I could use those strengths to achieve the goals I had in my life. And first, I used it very selfishly for myself. Then I expanded and asked my family to take the test, the assessment, so I could understand them better. And then obviously 10 years later, I became a certified strengths coach. And as I don't know what Hopkins' position is with the program, but when I go to the annual conferences, at least a third to half of the participants are university-based resources that are working to develop the strengths approach with their students. So it's really caught on, not just in the corporate world, but in the academic world as well.
And it's very interesting because so I don't know whether we at Hopkins or some part of Hopkins is using this approach, but it certainly is true that it just, how should I put it? It seems, well, it's one of those things that in hindsight seems intuitively obvious that different people have different strengths, and that when you're trying to maximize the efficacy of an organization, you ought to play to the strengths of the individuals you have, as opposed to trying to force fit people into your perception of what they ought to be doing and how they ought to be doing it. And
exactly.
So it seems, as I say, it's one of those things that, like many good ideas, they seem obvious after somebody tells you that.
Yes.
Right. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Yes. Interesting question. Have you held jobs where you have felt stuck professionally? And how did you go about moving beyond this point and finding a better fit?
I certainly have. And I've used different approaches depending on the different situation. When I was at the small business that I had returned to from many, many, many years of summer working there, after 5 or 6 years and an owner who really didn't want to move the business forward or grow it because maybe control or or just wanting to keep it a certain size. I did feel stuck, and I spent the first year after that realization trying to drive change. And when I realized that the barriers were too high, I looked outside and found a new job to go to. In that case, that was the right answer there. In another case, when I had kind of finished a job and felt I was in that repeat or Groundhog Day type zone, I self-promoted and looked for the opportunity to take, in that case, the expat assignment. I'd been doing the same thing for maybe the last year of 4 or 5 years. And I said, it's time to grow. What can I do to grow? So I looked internally within the organization, because it was a larger one, and said, there is a need here. I can demonstrate that I'm the right person to fill that need. And I self-promoted and was given that opportunity. I think each situation will be unique, and it depends on whether you see a future in the place that you are, but just not in the position you're in, versus whether you feel you need to look for a new place.
It does seem that that also requires some level of courage, to both recognize that maybe this is kind of whatever it is you're doing is you're stuck in a sense, intellectually or professionally, and that you're going to have to potentially take some risk, because I can imagine it's easy enough to sometimes just be very comfortable. Well, I'm not growing and I'm stuck, but there's a steady paycheck and taking care of, putting food on the table, and why rock the boat for myself in my life. So I think that's probably another element of courage to be able to do that.
You don't advocate for yourself, not many other people are going to. So stand up and take charge.
Somebody asks whether you're familiar with servant leadership as a defined leadership style. As this person says, it seems like it would mesh well with the strengths approach. That's servant leadership with capital S, capital L.
I'm familiar with the term and the concept. I think I've seen it related to healthcare, and especially some senior healthcare positions. But no, I haven't seen it linked to strength finders, but that's a good question. You're actually going to make me go do a little research on that, because I think it could be a good match or a complement.
Well, I think we have answered the questions that have been put into the Q&A. I'm always hesitant because not everyone types as fast as others, but I think we've answered the folks' questions. And so I think that what I would like to do right now is just thank you very much, Marcia, for what is really an inspiring story. I'm going to remember your presentation for a long time. And I've certainly learned something, and I appreciate that very much. And I'm sure that our audience has learned something as well. Undoubtedly, you are a leader in your field and an inspiration to the next generation of Hopkins engineers. And so thank you very much for being with us. I'd also like to thank Dr. Busch-Vishniac, who was attending with us today. And a special thanks to all of our attendees today, and appreciate your taking part in this lecture. And with that, keep safe, stay healthy, and be well. And hopefully we will see each other in person real soon.
Well, thank you. I hope so too. Thank you so much for being here.